37,000 feet over the Atlantic, the right engine quits. No explosion, no warning chime, just a sudden asymmetry in thrust and a cockpit master. Caution that changes everything in an instant. But what the passengers don't feel is the invisible constraint now ticking against the crew, a narrow window of altitude and airspeed where that dead engine can be coaxed back to life, a relight envelope that shrinks with every passing second. And that window's closing, fast. To understand why that window exists, start with what happens when everything works. Inside the combustion chamber at cruise, fire never stops. Fuel burns continuously at 30,000 feet, travelling 500 miles per hour. And the flame never flickers out. That flame depends on four things working in perfect harmony. Incoming airflow forced through the compressor, fuel atomized into a fine mist, spark from the igniters, and enough pressure to hold it all together. Break any one of those four, and the fire dies, which means restarting a dead engine isn't just turning a key, it's rebuilding that entire chain of events, mid-flight, in conditions never designed for ignition. And here's the catch. A jet engine won't restart at just any altitude or speed. There's a narrow corridor, the relight envelope, where the physics align. Step outside it, and ignition becomes impossible. Why, at 40,000 feet, air density drops to a quarter of sea level. Thin air means weak compression. The engine can't squeeze molecules hard enough to sustain combustion, even with igniters firing. Speed matters just as much. Too slow and airflow through the core collapses. There's not enough mass moving past a combustor to carry the flame. The engine chokes before it can light, so the envelope forms a shrinking box, below 30,000 feet, above 250 knots. Stray outside those boundaries, and the window slams shut, which is why every second the crew hesitates, that box gets smaller. Back in the cockpit, the moment the engine dies, the clock starts. The flight deck gets 3 warnings at once, a master caution chime, an amber ICAS alert, and the sudden yaw as thrust vanishes from one side. First action, confirm which engine failed, cross-check the gauges, N1 spool winding down, exhaust gas temperature dropping, fuel flow at 0. Then secure it. Close the fuel valve, shut off hydraulics, verify the aircraft is still controllable on one engine. And now the decision tree splits. Attempt immediate relight while still inside the envelope, or begin a controlled descent to buy more attempts. Either way, that invisible window is already shrinking. The crew makes the call. Attempt immediate relight at cruise. The pilot triggers the igniter sequence, electric spark firing into the combustor, fuel valves opening, and now they wait. 30 seconds to know if combustion catches. If the flame takes hold, exhaust gas temperature climbs, N1 spool accelerates, and the engine roars back to life. The crisis ends before most passengers notice, but if the igniters fire into dead air, nothing. And that's the gamble the crew just took. Every failed attempt burns time and altitude they can't recover. The aircraft is still descending, still drifting toward the edge of the envelope, and the next decision point is already approaching. So if the first attempt fails, the crew makes a calculated trade. Sacrifice altitude now, descend into thicker air, where the envelope stays wide open. It's a controlled fall, trading height for time, buying multiple chances to coax that engine back to life. But every 1,000 feet costs fuel. Denser air means higher drag. The working engine burns harder to maintain speed, and the geography tightens like a noose. Airports that were in range at cruise altitude slip beyond reach with every descent increment. The descent rate itself becomes a chess move. Drop too fast and you overshoot the envelope's lower edge. Too slow and you burn fuel without gaining restart opportunities. The crew flies the edge of physics, still chasing that shrinking window. And then the moment arrives. The final igniter attempt fires into air too thin, too slow to sustain combustion. The flame never catches. The envelope the crew has been chasing has closed behind them, and they accept the new reality. This engine will not restart today. The ticking clock from 37,000 feet ago, the one that opened this story, has run out. What began as a narrow window of physics is now a closed door, and the flight continues on one engine, with no second chances left. So if the envelope closes before combustion returns, the crew commits to a new flight regime, single-engine cruise. Asymmetric thrust now, one turbine pushing, the other a silent drag pod, demands constant rudder trim to hold the nose straight. And the penalties stack fast. Climb capability collapses, half the thrust means a ceiling may be 10,000 feet lower. Landing distances stretch 20% longer. Fuel burn climbs as the working engine shoulders double duty. Manageable, but zero margin remains for another failure. Which reveals the truth most passengers never see. Every flight operates inside overlapping envelopes. Relight, glide range, pressurization limits, fuel endurance. Invisible boundaries all shrinking or shifting in real time. And the crew is trained to fly the edges. So the next time you settle into your seat at 39,000 feet, remember, between you and the ground lies a web of physics, procedure, and training that turns catastrophe into solved problems. The same edges that closed around that flight deck over the Atlantic. The edges are there, you just never needed to see them.